The horizon blazed with the dying light of day, gilding the sea in bronze and fire as the drowned Virtue cut through the waves like a blade through velvet. At her helm stood Caspian Vael, cloaked in the tattered finery of war, his silhouette proud against the burning sky. The sails above him, patched and salt-stiffened, bore the scars of Cindermoor, a name that now stirred both dread and reverence in the hearts of the coastal folk. Behind him, the harbour of Meridia approached, each crested rooftop and glimmering tower a herald of home, but also of reckoning. The salt spray clung to his beard, and beneath his weather-worn coat, his chest bore a tightness, not born of fatigue, but expectation. He had done the unthinkable. Cindermoor, once choked in Reaver flames, its docks blackened and its people scattered, now flew the standard of the Isles once more. Months of blood, manoeuvre, and iron resolve had won that bastion back from ruin. It had cost ships, souls, and nearly his own life thrice over, but it was done. The victory was complete. And yet, even as gulls shrieked overhead and the familiar scent of Meridia's spice-salted air touched his senses, Caspian's eyes did not soften. They were fixed on the grand palazzo that crowned the harbour's heights, a gilded relic of old Meridia, seat of the Council of Captains, a place where men spoke of fate and coin in the same breath, and where power changed hands like cards at a gaming table. That was where he was to meet Lord Edwin Marrick. The last missive from Marrick, penned in a script too clean for the blood it bore, had praised Caspian's exploits and summoned him home. The council watches with keen interest, it had read. Victory at Cindermoor may be the key that unlocks what you seek. Caspian had folded that parchment 100 times, worn its edges soft between gloved fingers. It spoke not of knighthood or titles, but of recognition, of legitimacy, of rising from the outlaw's tide to stand beside Meridia's chosen. Commander Thorne's own emissary had written it, Marrick, the silver quill behind the steel of Meridia's war machine. Caspian had not returned to bask in accolades, he returned for transformation. As the drowned Virtue glided into the Grand Marina, sailors and dockworkers paused, eyes wide, mouths agape. They had heard the rumours. Now they saw the proof. The battered prow, the Reaver banners torn and draped over the sides, the solemn crew who had stared into the storm and returned. "Drop anchor," Caspian called, his voice a rasp from weeks of command, "and let them see who we are." The crew obeyed without word. These were not green raiders, they were survivors, veterans now of the most cursed waters in the southern shoals. They moved like one body, taught with discipline, forged in fire. Caspian turned toward the dock where a small delegation awaited. His eye found the figure at their center, tall, lean, draped in slate-blue robes embroidered with the sun sigil of Aldrich Thorne. Lord Edwin Marrick. He did not smile. He did not bow. Caspian descended the gangplank, every step echoing upon the boards like a war drum. His coat fluttered behind him, and at his side hung the sabre that had taken a dozen Reaver lives. He did not speak until his boots touched the stone of the dock. "Marrick," he said, voice low, edged like the wind before a gale. The emissary inclined his head, one hand tucked within his robes. "Captain Vael, Meridia welcomes your return." Caspian allowed himself a breath. It tasted like home. And yet, there was something amiss. Marrick's tone was courteous, yes, but cool, formal, no heralds, no escort to the palazzo. Still he bowed his head in respect. "I come as summoned. The matter of council and commission." Marrick gave a smile that never reached his eyes. "Yes, of course, but not here. The council is otherwise engaged today. Walk with me. We've arranged a place more suited for discretion." Caspian's brow furrowed. No procession, no chamber of judgment, no seat in the gilded halls he had imagined countless times. But he nodded, slowly. "Lead on." As they departed the docks, the shadows lengthened across the marble streets, and the whisper of the city began to grow. Thus began the unmaking of expectation. The path Marrick led was no golden promenade. Gone were the sunlit courts and palatial arches Caspian had once envisioned. They wound instead through the marrow of the city, through bazaar-choked alleys slick with the sweat of trade and the breath of summer fish. Spices hung thick in the air, clove, turmeric, and the iron tang of salted brine. Hawkers bellowed from their stalls, their cries masking the quiet conversation of the pair who moved with purpose beneath the hanging silks. They stopped at a shaded colonnade behind the grand bazaar, stone worn smooth by years of footsteps, nestled between an incense shop and a fishmonger's stall. It stank of heat, crushed fruit, and the stale oil of 1,000 fried delicacies. Caspian's brow darkened. "This is where you brought me," he said at last, voice low but laced with insult. "After all we've done? After Cindermoor bled red and black under our flags?" Marrick's hands folded neatly behind his back. His expression bore the patient weariness of a man too long steeped in compromise. "Do you think I chose this place for ambience?" he replied. "Caspian, I brought you here because it's the only place we can speak freely." Caspian scoffed, eyes scanning the alley with disdain. "I thought I'd earned a seat at the Grand Palazzo, marble colonnades, a toast among banners, not fish guts and sweat-slick stones." "You've earned more than most," Marrick replied gently, "but the council is divided, as it ever is. There are some who would see your banners struck from our ports entirely. You know how many among the Admiralty still refuse to utter your name without venom." Caspian stepped forward, jaw tight. "I brought unity where there was none. I turned brigands into blades. Cindermoor stands because of me." "No one denies that," Marrick said, voice calm. "But what you propose, open recognition, elevation to the council, a formal commission under the Armada, it's too much. Too soon. The corsairs bleed us in the north, and already there are whispers that we favor pirates over our own commanders." "They're not whispers," Caspian growled. "They're truths no one wants to say aloud. The Guild has succeeded where the Armada faltered. We took back ports you abandoned. My fleet sails under your war banners, even when yours cannot." "And that is precisely why we cannot afford to name you openly," Marrick said. "If you were made councillor now, do you think your colleagues in the Guild would kneel to the Admiralty's authority? How long before Blackshaw breaks ranks, or Ferrin? You stand at the centre of a storm balanced on pride and politics. If we name you, we name all pirates. And that is untenable." Caspian's hand curled into a fist. "Then let me be the bridge. Name me and the Guild follows. I'll make it so. Give me the mandate and my fleet becomes Armada. Every hull, every cannon under Thorn's command." Marrick's gaze narrowed. "And when you fly the Crown's colours, Caspian, what happens when the Guild demands blood for old grievances? When one of your councillors decides the accord no longer serves them? Do you stand with Meridia? Or with the tide?" Silence pressed between them, broken only by a hawker shouting the price of lemonfish skewers. At last, Marrick sighed. "We are not ungrateful. The commander and I, truly, we see what you've built, but timing matters. Legitimacy is not born in battle alone. It must be allowed, and this council is not ready to allow it." Caspian stared, jaw clenched so tightly it ached. "You brought me here to dismiss me." "No," Marrick said. "I brought you here to remind you." His voice softened not with pity but with conviction. "Do you remember the Kraken? Our first meeting? Before Cindermoor? Before any of this? When all you had was a rusting fleet and a half-mad dream of unity?" Caspian's eyes flickered. "I remember." 3 days after we met," Marrick continued, "a dozen nobles were found dead, throats cut, blood sigils scrawled across the alleys of Valerian Heights. The commander was ready to hang every pirate in Meridia. I was with him when he ordered the gallows raised. I stopped him, Caspian said, voice low. You did more than that, Marrick said, eyes narrowing. You convinced him. Even when it looked like the alliance had died before it was born, when every sign pointed to betrayal, you made him see what I could not. That the pirate guild wasn't to be trusted, but you were. He didn't spare the nooses for their sake. He did it for you. Marrick's voice dropped to a near whisper. That day, you stood alone, betrayed by your own, facing the gallows beside the rest, and still you fought for peace. You brought the guild to heel. You gave us Cindermoor. You gave us hope. He stepped closer. You are exactly where you need to be, Caspian Vael, not behind a council desk weighed down by old men's fears, but here, in the wind, in the fire, the fulcrum on which this alliance turns. You may never be their equal, but you are already their better. Caspian did not speak for a long time. Then finally he nodded once sharply. Then give me the next fight. Mistral's End, Marrick said with the casual tone of a man announcing weather. Caspian stared at him for a long moment, then turned his gaze to the sky above the alley, grey and pale, a colour that suited what he had just heard. Mistral's End, he echoed, voice iron flat. You want that cursed grave reclaimed? Marrick's expression was unreadable. Caspian's jaw twitched. That campaign will take a year minimum. It's not the storms that'll break us, it's that it's their heartland. Every Reaver clan with blood in their teeth sails through that bay. No 2 weeks go by without a new warband staking a claim or raising another. You're not charting a coastline, you're walking into a tempest of shifting warlords and blood feuds. Even if we take it, holding it will bleed us dry. Marrick said nothing. Caspian stepped forward, voice low but fierce. 3,000 butchered there in the first year of the war. Their war priests still chant the names of the drowned in the walls. You're not sending me on a mission, you're giving me a tomb and asking me to plant a flag on it. We know the risks, Marrick replied. So do you. Caspian's hands were clenched behind his back. Then you also know I'll need more than whispers and prayers. If you want Mistral's End, you'll need to give me what you haven't before. Support. Real support, Dart. Marrick raised a brow. Ballistae, storm chain anchors, warding talismans, enough munitions to level the first 3 layers of its walls twice over, dry blood powder, riverstone oil, and men, trained ones, not just former armada looking to clear a bounty. He paused, then added coldly, and ships that don't fall apart in salt air. To his surprise, Marrick did not argue. We've begun to arrange it, he said. Eldoria has entered the fold. Caspian blinked. Eldoria? Marrick nodded. Their High Consulate has agreed to supply enchantments, artillery components, and arcane munitions. Shipments are already being routed through Velvenreach, quietly, but they won't send a sail closer than that. The aid comes with conditions. Caspian muttered a curse in some forgotten coastal tongue. So you want me to fetch your gilded toys across a gauntlet of Reaver patrols and weather-warped shoals? Marrick gave the faintest of shrugs. Now that Cindermoor is secure, you can establish your own trade routes. Make them discreet, defensible. Caspian narrowed his eyes. And who holds Cindermoor now? Still my flag flying there, last I checked. That changes soon, Marrick said. We're dispatching a logistics corps to establish a formal outpost, naval quartermasters, harbour adjudicators, and an official trade commissioner. Cindermoor will fly the Meridian standard. Port control must be returned to the Armada. Caspian's lips thinned. And the Guild? They won't like it, Marrick admitted. But they'll understand. So long as you hold command, the outpost legitimizes the route and gives you the lifeline you need. Caspian looked away, staring into the busy crowd beyond the alley. His shoulders sagged just slightly. Reavers, storms, haunted ruins, and now quartermasters. Marrick allowed a small smile. War is logistics, Captain. There was a pause, a silence between two men who had both spent too many years holding their own lines in different kinds of battle. Then Marrick straightened his coat. "Secure Mistral's end," he said. "Then we can speak again of your seat on the council, but not before." Caspian gave no answer for a time, then slowly he nodded. "I'll do it," he said. "Not for your council, Marrick. For the ones who bled at Cindermoor and still follow me." He turned to go. Marrick called after him quietly, almost kindly. "You're precisely where we need you, Caspian. No one else could do what you've done, and no one else can do what comes next." Caspian delayed his departure from port by a night. The fleet would wait. Cindermoor could wait. There was business yet unfinished in Meridia, quiet, personal, and best handled beneath the right shadows. South of the bustling piers, tucked where the stone gave way to slick moss and salt-dark alleys, stood the whispering Kraken. To the common folk it was little more than a den of drunks and cutthroats, a half-sunken tavern where salt-stained outcasts drank away what little copper they had left. But every pirate worth their salt knew better. The Kraken was no mere watering hole. It was a neutral ground, an undercurrent of old oaths and quiet dealings, where pacts were made, fleets rebalanced, and whispers sold dearer than silver. Some even claimed its walls, warped ribs of a sea beast long since beached, still hummed with the residue of forgotten rites. Caspian stepped through its crooked door without announcement. He didn't need one. The Kraken remembered its own. The lanterns within flickered low and golden, casting their light over nets of pearls and relics, over scarred tables pitted with knife marks and old burn rings where captains bargained in silence. Sea shanties echoed through the timbers, half-sung, half-remembered, the voices more spirit than song. And there, leaning at the bar beneath the great Kraken's carved maw, was Meridia Nightwind. She had not changed, and yet she had. Her long hair, the color of midnight kissed by frost, was braided with bone charms and moonbeads. Her eyes, luminous as tidewater, flicked up before he spoke. She had felt him enter, as surely as one senses a storm's first breath. "Still bringing trouble to my doorstep, Vael?" she said, voice velvet over steel. Caspian approached with a weary smile. "Wouldn't feel like home otherwise." She set down the mug she'd been drying and crossed her arms, the candlelight catching on silver rings that lined her fingers. "You look like hell." He chuckled softly. "It's been a long year. And a longer one ahead if the winds carry truth." Caspian raised a brow but said nothing. He didn't need to ask how she knew. The Whispering Kraken was more than a tavern. It was Meridia's unspoken ledger. Here the currents of politics flowed faster than any official record. Whispers traded faster than coin. She gestured to the shadowed booth at the far end, one they'd shared before, long ago when they'd been younger, more foolish and less burdened. He followed her in silence. They sat with mugs of storm-brewed grog, the air thick with the scent of cedar smoke and old ship rope. Around them the Kraken pulsed with its usual rhythm, quiet laughter, dice tapping on wood, and a half-heard confession in the language of sailors. Caspian looked into his drink before speaking. "He wants Mistral's end." Meridia didn't flinch. "Of course he does." I told him what it would cost, what it would take. He nodded as if I'd asked for nothing but salt. Then he smiled like he was blessing me with execution. "He was," she said. Caspian sighed and leaned back, the tension clinging to his shoulders like a soaked cloak. "I don't even know why I told you. You probably knew before I did." She looked at him then, not with judgment, but with that quiet, unshakable knowing that always unmade him. "You didn't come to tell me," she said. "You came because this is the only place you're allowed to feel what it means." His hand brushed over hers gently without claim or apology. She didn't move away. They said nothing for a while. Eventually she rose. "Come," she said, voice softer now. "You've bled enough for banners and ghosts. Just tonight. Let it be quiet." He followed her up the stairs, past hanging charms and driftwood chimes that sang with the breeze of the sea-breached wall. The room was simple, a bed, a window that framed the endless dark water, and her. Caspian didn't need to ask permission. He didn't need words. Their silence spoke with the weight of years lost and moments reclaimed. Tonight, the tides would keep their secrets. Dawn filtered through the salt-streaked window in hues of rose and pearl, casting a gentle glow across the sea-worn floorboards. Caspian stood near the open frame, strapping his coat beneath the light's gaze fixed on the distant horizon where fate waited like a coiled tempest. His boots were fastened, his blade was buckled. Duty called, and with it the shadows of Mistral's end. Behind him the room stirred. Meridia rose without a word, draping herself in a simple shawl the color of storm clouds. She watched him in silence, her eyes heavy not with sleep, but with unspoken things. He felt her before he heard her, arms slipping around him from behind, her cheek resting between his shoulder blades. "You don't have to leave just yet," she murmured, voice low with a tenderness rarely given form. "I do," he said, quiet but firm, "before the tide turns." For a moment neither moved. The kraken below murmured its songs, the sea lapping at its foundation like a beast made drowsy by moonlight. For a long moment neither spoke, only the low breath of the sea below and the whispering kraken's timbers shifting like a dream half-remembered. Then softly Meridia said, "There's something beneath Tidewatch Haven." Caspian didn't move, but the stillness that followed was heavier than silence. "A relic," she went on, "ancient, bound in salt and shadow. It could change everything at Mistral's end. Turn the tide with half the men you planned, maybe more." His jaw clenched. "Meridia, your oath." "I know," she said, calm and cold as the sea, "but I've stood on the sidelines too long, pretending neutrality was virtue. It isn't. Not anymore." "Stop," he said sharply. "I came because I needed you. Not this, not to condemn you." "I'd betray 100 vows," she replied, stepping closer, "if it means you come back alive." He looked at her then, really looked. Pain, love, and something like fear stirring behind his eyes. "Please," he murmured, "don't do this." "Caspian," she said, her voice breaking with quiet resolve, "just this once. Let me choose you. I don't want to survive this war if it means losing you to it." He didn't answer, not aloud. What followed was heard by no one. Their heads bowed close, words exchanged in fragments and glances, a plan shaped not in certainty, but in desperate, whispered trust. When he finally stood, he kissed her brow. She didn't speak, just held him for one heartbeat longer. Then he was gone, his footsteps fading into the mist below. Alone above, Meridia turned to the window, her hand pressed against her chest where the brine-bound heart pulsed faintly beneath her shawl, warm, ancient, and waiting. And outside, as the first hints of dawn brushed the sea, the tide began to rise.